Okay, video number 3 about my experiences with the Chromatone keyboard. As you can see this morning, I took the time to color the keys. I got some Avery removable stickers. Uh, Here they are. I got them in the mail yesterday, actually this morning from Amazon. And I'm going to take a few minutes to explain what I did and what I'm thinking as I do it. I'm hoping you can pick up the distinction in the colors here because there's actually 3 colors. On the lower 2 rows, these 2 rows here, you'll see that I have colored the keyboard in the diatonic scale the way you normally know a piano to go. So if this is low C, there's D flat, there's D, E flat, E, and then F jumps up here, right? So the bottom 2 rows are colored exactly like how you know the regular piano. Okay, and I've done this with the Avery stickers that are removable, and they really are kind of a, you can tell how flimsy and not permanent they are. They're easily detachable, they won't leave a lot of residue. So, and I did that on purpose because I wanted to do something that was reversible. But if I find that I'm comfortable with this color scheme, I'll find some more permanent stickers that'll really stick on there. But you can tell that they sort of feel like paper. They sort of feel like the upside of a post-it note. All right, and they'll probably get dirty with time and need to be replaced. Right now, on the upper 3 rows, so that's this row, and this row, you'll see that it's actually a light blue sticker and dark blue stickers intertwined with the white. Now I'm going to do some explaining about that. I'm actually going to put a graphic up on the screen uh, that's going to show you the entire layout of the coloring for the chromatone. And you see that I have the diatonic scale in the lower 2 rows. And on the top 3 rows, I have what I call the tricolor scheme. Now, the tricolor scheme is a scheme that I came up with in 2006. A very similar scheme has been come up with by an engineer named Roy Pertchick, and he actually contacted me in the last year to let me know that he has a patent on this scheme, and so I have agreed to give him credit whenever I discuss ideas that are similar to his ideas. And in fact, he's invented a vibraphone that uses almost identically the same color scheme that I've come up with for the first 3 rows of, of this chromatone. Now, I originally came up with the tricolor scheme for the regular diatonic piano, and I'm throwing a graphic up of the, the diatonic piano with the tricolor scheme superimposed on the left side of the keyboard. And as you can see, if you start all the way at the left, C is white, D flat is that light blue, and D is that dark blue. Now, I'm going to take some time to explain what's going on here. First of all, the logic is these colors denote, and I'm going to go back now to show it on a chromatone. The white represents 1 diminished 7th chord, right? So you can see if you look all the way to the left of the chromatone, right? C is white, skip 1, skip 1, E flat is white, skip 1, skip 1, G flat is white, skip 1, skip 1, A is white, right? So looking at it on the physical chromatone, we have C is white, skip 1, skip 1, E flat is white, skip 1, skip 1, G flat is white, skip 1, skip 1, A is white. Now, I won't go into all the reasons right now, but there's a lot of reasons to believe that a diminished scale or a diminished seventh is the most logical way to organize a 12-note musical system. The primary reason being that it's a symmetrical scale. So let me bring a graphic up on the screen to explain the rationale for the tricolor scheme. The tricolor scheme is organized around the diminished scale, of which is only three. There's only three scales, or I should say, yeah, there's only three scales, or three dim 7 chords, after which they start repeating notes, right? So you've got, in this case, we've got what I'm calling the morning one, which starts on C. There's the evening one, which starts on D flat. And then there's the night one, which starts on D. After that, they just start to repeat. It's a symmetrical scale, which makes it ideal for the chromatone because the chromatone is also symmetrical. Now, what do I mean by symmetrical? We tend to think that the diatonic piano is symmetrical if you haven't looked at it deeply. For example, if you look over at a diatonic piano, it's easy to think that from going from C to C that this is symmetrical. It's not. It just looks that way because we've arranged this keyboard that way. What the chromatone truthfully tells us is that there is an asymmetry to the diatonic scale, right? There is C, and then there's a whole note up to get to D, a whole note up to get to D, but in order to get to the next note of the diatonic scale, you have to go up a half note, which is why it goes up, and then you've got whole note, whole note, whole note, half note, right, to get to the rest of the scale. In other words, the chromatone displays, it reveals, it manifests the asymmetrical nature of the diatonic scale. Whereas if you look at the diminished scale, you can really see how symmetrical. I mean, it almost looks like a checkerboard flag. Look at the blue. You've got it here, 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 here. I mean, there's a beauty in the symmetry of that light blue, what I'm calling, you know, evening. And then similarly with the night, there it is. It's 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. It's perfectly symmetrical, and the chromatone reveals how symmetrical it is. So essentially, with the tricolor, we've got three perfectly symmetrical scales that are interlaced in the keyboard. Right. Another rationale for the tricolor scheme is that it's ideal for exploring Barry Harris's jazz theories. Now, I won't go into that a lot today. One, because Barry Harris's ideas are pretty complex. They take quite some time to explain. At least I would take some time to explain them. And furthermore, I only partially, I understand Barry Harris's jazz theories probably about 5% of what they're all about. And so when I get better at understanding them and explaining them, I'll create a video about that. But one of his theories is the diminished sixth scale. And one of the things that we're going to explore with the chromatone is how that scale lays itself out so symmetrically and so nicely on the chromatone. I mean, you can see how symmetrical it is on the chromatone. And finally, the last thing we want to talk about with regards to the tricolor scheme is how diminished scales are musical corridors that allow one to move between keys gracefully. Someone on the, actually T-Block on the Learn Gospel Music forums a few years ago made an interesting comment. He said that diminished seventh chords are like the agents in the Matrix. They're both everyone and they are no one, which I thought was an excellent metaphor for how diminished seventh chords and the diminished scale itself work. They really are like that. And so, actually, let me explain the concept a little bit more for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, with a diatonic piano, which I play better. So, for example, let's say you're talking about going to a C chord, right? So here is C, right? And to get to C, you might come from the 5/7 chord, right? So say G7, G7. Now, a lot of us who are learning either jazz or gospel won't play the G7th chord flat out that way. Instead, we'll play some kind of altered version of it. I know myself, I like to play the 7th flat 9 because I believe I like the tension that's created by the tritone in between the A flat and the D, and furthermore the tritone created by the F and the B. So essentially, at the bottom, at the structural underpinnings of every altered 7th chord is a diminished 7th chord, right? There is a diminished 7th chord at the bottom of what takes you to C, right? So this brings us to one of the concepts I want to talk about with regards to the, the color scheme that I'm using. I'm using a concept. Remember what I said a few minutes ago? I'm not calling them white and light blue and dark blue. I'm calling them morning, evening, and night. Now, the rationale behind this is that morning takes you to evening, evening takes you to night, and night takes you to morning. Now, what do I mean by that? If you look at the tricolor scheme superimposed on a regular piano, we'll see that that F diminished is essentially all that dark blue, those night notes. That is the night diminished 7th. And that night, if you want to go to C, it takes you to C, which is morning. C is white. C is morning. Right? But not only that, with the chromatone and the coloring system I've come up with is going to make more clear for us is that this night, since night takes us to morning, night can take us to any morning key. It can take us to C, but it could also take us to G flat. It could also take us to E flat. It can also take us to A. In other words, that night can take us to any morning. And that's a concept we're going to be exploring more and more